What's up, you absolutely wonderful Magento loving friends of mine? Joseph here with, guess it, another practice test question for this week. I am excited about next week. So next Wednesday comes out another practice test question, as well as a video on Thursday, but we have something very special coming out on Wednesday, in addition to what I think is our special practice test questions. We have a new product coming out. This is built by our very own Chris Nanninga, a brilliant software architect who has spent many years working at various agencies. He has a very solid grasp on software development, has helped us extensively with our courses, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about this new product a little bit more here coming up next week. So just a little teaser here. You're going to hear more about this, and I'm really, really excited about this. Let's jump into our practice test question for this week. You are handling the backend implementation for a PWA project on Adobe Commerce with B2B. Your team has built some customizations that affect product details on a company-by-company basis. As your team, I lost where I was. As your team is reviewing the front end, they find some company details that are being incorrectly shared across some GraphQL requests that share a shared catalog. If my English teacher, which happens to be my mom, would have read this last paragraph, she would have had a very kind fit. Shared. Not good. Anyways, share a shared catalog. Keeping performance in mind, how do you resolve this issue? We have three different options. What are those options? Add an exclusion to the GET request in Varnish VCL. Include the company ID and Magento company ID header. Add a new factor provider into the cache ID calculator. Let's talk about this. So adding an exclusion into the GET request for Varnish VCL. I would view this as a demerit right here on this answer because what was the qualification? The qualification right here, keeping performance in mind. This is our qualifier. So this is not keeping performance in mind. So I would say, okay, this is possible, but this is a demerit because it's not keeping performance in mind. So keep that in mind there. So probably not A. Let's look at B. Include the company ID in the Magento company ID header. This is one of those things that your knowledge affects whether you can pass the test or not. I mean, that's easy. There's only so much we can kind of BS our way through on a test just based off of our intuition. The way these Magento tests or Adobe Commerce tests are written, we really can't. So include the company ID in the Magento company ID header. If I approach this and I'd have no idea about this, I really couldn't tell you what would be the answer here. So that is probably not something I could, just answer off the top of my head. Add a new factor provider into the cache ID calculator. Again, both of these B and C seem somewhat plausible, but who am I to say what's accurate? That is where we can kind of guess our way through the test, but it comes back to this knowledge. And that's what I'm provoking you to do. I want to encourage you to do is get this knowledge. And that's what I'm talking about, these subjects. Now, GraphQL is very much on the Master Architect test. It's not, to my knowledge, on either professional or expert level at this point, but it will be. So the more you learn about GraphQL now, the better off you are going to be in the future, especially if you do want to sit for that crazy hard Master Architect test at 84% score in order to be able to pass. So let's talk about answer C. Add a new factor. Actually, I'm sorry. Let me back up. Take a look again at company ID. So let's say we saw this question on the test. We're like, B or C, just eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch. Just, you know how that goes. So we pick B or whatever. So after the test is over, we got to find that answer. And I highly recommend, obviously, you break the NDA to share it with anybody, but take those mental notes and go through and beef up your knowledge in those areas. Okay, was it Magento company ID or was it cache ID calculator? So what I would say is let's go do a search in the code base for this. So we're going to go here, x-magento-company ID, nothing. So clearly B is wrong because there is no recognition of this Magento company ID header. As such, B is wrong. So that means by process of elimination, C is right, but why is C right? So let's do a search for cache ID calculator. Immediately, we see a we'll just leave it like this. We see some options right here. We see a GraphQL config. Oh, this is in the test. That's not of any interest to us. We see it here in our DIXML. We have ID factor providers. We have our GraphQL plugin, which looks like it sets this header. And so what we need to do is then say why and how is this used. And this is where Magento documentations come a very long ways to understanding this stuff. So we have our caching for logged in customers, and we can do a search for this, and we see that we have a cache ID calculator. It tells us what is included in here. You'll notice that company ID is not included in this list. And that's where understanding the documentation is very helpful. Again, we can look at the code. I highly recommend looking at the code, but the dev docs do provide another perspective on this. So as such, we would see that C is the correct answer, but with the caveat that we really shouldn't be just adding in all these new factors. Company ID, maybe adding 1 or 2 is okay, but after that, we just end up starting to just rack up these permutations, and that's not good for performance. So that's where I would select C as the correct answer. Unfortunately, if you came through this and you didn't have that knowledge, then you'd want to take that mental note and go back through and come up with the correct answer as a result. So C is the correct answer for this question, cache ID calculator. I highly recommend looking at this answer here in your in DevDocs. Understand how this works, and you will become a better GraphQL developer. Take care, and we will see you next week.